welcome to Simulated Munich, and one of the most interesting simulated airports that I think you'll ever find, and a historic livery too. This is the PMDG 737, one of the most solid airplanes that you can find here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hello and welcome to the channel. Welcome if you're new. My name is Dave. I do the Spy Flights over on Twitch, and every week or so I like to come over here on YouTube and do what I call a complete cold and dark flight. There's a lot of new people that are getting involved in flight sim right now, and these airplanes are getting more and more complex. So the whole goal here is saying, here's how you fly these amazing jetliners. So again, welcome. I hope you are having a really good time with the new sims and also with the amazing new airplanes. We've got the Phoenix that's going to be coming out soon, version 2. We just had the F-28. The ATR remains an absolutely fun little airplane too. But I think that one of the most solid performers that's out there is the PMDG 737. And I said Air Berlin here. So what are we doing today? This is going to be a historic flight. Air Berlin was an airline, flew out of Berlin in Germany, and they did flights from Munich, also known as München, if you're going to spell it the right way, and also they would go up to Berlin. I think they did about 4 of these, 4 maybe 5 flights a day. They flew Airbuses and 737s. This should be about an hour and 20-minute flight. The weather outside is fairly nice, but it is a little bit on the breezy side. So what are we doing today? Well, we are taking PMDG's 737 Model 800 on a full cold and dark flight with a historic airline and livery. Here are the add-ons that I use: Navigraph and SimBrief. Both of those are what I use for the flight planning. Volanta is what I use for flight tracking. You'll see at the top of the screen a little widget that shows you where we're going and how far we have to go, and that's what you do there. Sometimes I also use a free application online called SkyVector. It's at skyvector.com. That is really good for learning basic flight planning and if you have to do a VOR to VOR flight plan. So what should you do for today's flight? Well, the cool part about YouTube is you can stop and start and rewind the video, and you can fly along with me. So if learning this airplane is something you'd like to do, hit pause on the video, fire up your flight simulator, and meet me here at Simulated Munich in your 737, and we'll kind of fly the flight together. Now, there's one difference. This is recorded, which means the weather that I'm dealing with is not going to be the weather that you're dealing with, so your runways and your departures and your arrivals might be a little bit different, but probably enough of the same that this should help out a bit. The great thing, like I said, you get to pause and restart the video. That's really nice as you're flying along. I also like to suggest that in a couple of days or something, please be sure and take this airplane on a flight out of your own hometown airport. That's just a way for you to kind of remember what's going on with all of this and remember where all the buttons are. And a nice little invitation: join us for the Spy Flights over on Twitch. Everything is a group flight over there. We depart most days of the week, Tuesday through Sunday, 1900 Zulu. During the summer months, that's about 3 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. And let's see, what else have we got to show you on this one? Well, here is our flight plan today. And these look like some of the old school or even modern departure boards. That's kind of the way I've modeled these. But you can see that the weather right now here in Munich, the winds right now are 270 at 14 knots. So it's a little breezy, but it's even more breezy. I'm looking at that arrival weather there. Those are the METARs. Those are the kind of current weather updates that pilots use. You can see the winds there are 260 at 24 knots, gusting to 34, so it's going to be a bouncy ride. We also have some rain showers set to move into the area. It's nice in Munich right now, but it's a little bit on the stormy side in Berlin. So one thing that's going to happen, again, if this is your first time with me, we're going to take off, get to cruise altitude, and then I'll hit pause for about 10 minutes in my video. And then about 80 miles from our top of descent, we'll talk about that if that's new to you, then I'll restart the video. That way we've all got time to kind of get up, go get another cup of coffee, whatever it is you like to do, and you also don't have to sit here and listen to me yammer away at a time when there's not a lot going on, because when I start doing that, the jokes get really bad. Okay, let's head on out to the simulated airport right now. And the Air Berlin 737, yep, Air Berlin actually did fly 737. This is the Model 800. It is one of the most commonly used 737s in use today. It is an absolute workhorse of the industry, and this is a really nicely modeled airplane too. And the other thing that I kind of like about Microsoft Flight Simulator and the other simulators too is you can kind of take a look back at some of the historic liveries and airlines that aren't with us anymore. Like Air Berlin in Germany, and in South Africa there is an airline, Kalula Airlines, that had some particularly clever liveries, paint jobs on their airplane too. So this airplane is really, really nicely modeled. In fact, if you kind of start zooming in and get really close to the airplane, you even start to see how it is that they have modeled the brake lines and the things that you would actually check if you were going to do an actual walk around in this airplane. So again, you get a little closer to the airplane like this, and you can actually start taking a look at some of the procedures for walk-arounds and some of the things that you would actually check. Fact is, I think if we even go up here to the nose gear, I think if we come around, so yeah, you can see some of the hydraulic lines and the light and the lines coming down here. And if you come on back here, I think they even modeled some of the ground plug-ins that the ground crew would use to plug in their headsets. You could also see up here, this is where you would go and plug in the ground power. Let's see if we can come over here. Oh yeah, here's the headset area. So yeah, external power, and this is where the ground crew plugs in the headset. So incredible detail, and the airplanes are just getting better and better. And if you're wondering how it is that I'm zipping around, this is what's called the drone cam in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you can use just a simple Xbox controller, not only to control your airplane, but also to control the drone cam as you go looking through the airports and looking through your airplane. Out of drone cam mode. So this is just the basic external mode for the airplane. Another add-on that I sometimes forget to mention is a payware called GSX from Flight Sim Dream Team. And what this is good for is operating jetways. Let's see here. We'll have it be Lufthansa here. But anyhow, this is going to move the jetway into place. It'll also put some ground equipment out there that's branded, so there is our Lufthansa tug. And again, they really did an incredible job modeling the jetways here. In fact, the terminal is modeled here too. One of the things that I'm always excited, like about Munich Airport is they also have their own brew pub. I mean, they're actually big vats at Munich Airport, and they have an airport brew. I mean, come on, you gotta like something like that, whether you like an adult beverage or not. It's kind of a funny little thing that they've got at Munich Airport. Okay, so the jetway is now in place. We can go ahead and hop into the cockpit, and let's get started. Ready to go and do punching buttons and stuff? Okay, the first thing that I usually like to do is come down to the flight management computer. And my cold and dark setup here for this airplane is it's empty of passengers, it's empty of fuel and cargo. The front door is open, and as you saw, the ground power card is plugged in. And you can set all that up at PMDG setup, and it's pretty easy to go in here and just use the menus. But we're going to go to ground services here. And you can see that the ground power card is plugged in. You can also see that my wheel chocks are in place. I'm going to go to page 2, and this is where we put in our fuel order. I usually get the Lido style of charts. This is the default charts, flight plan. This is the default style that you get in SimBrief. Mostly because an awful lot of airlines just use this basic style of flight plan. And one of the things we need is our fuel. And it's going to be 13,681 pounds. Now, this is a Boeing, and I tend to fly the Boeing 737 in pounds. You can also fly it in kilos. I usually do kilos in the Airbus and pounds in the Boeing. So 13,681. That's going to be our fuel. So 13,681. Now, this is a little bit of a longer way to go about doing things. You can also just plug this into another menu, and your airplane's loaded, and you can go. So if you don't have time for the all of the looking around and what we call in Flight Simulator immersion, if you don't have time for that, then guess what? There's a fast way to do it too. But you can see the PMDG fuel truck is showing up here. And backing up to the wing, they're going to actually attach the fuel line to the ground so that you can go and start pumping fuel, and then they'll attach a fuel line into your engine. Okay, so you see right there, there's the ground line, and then they're going to notch your engine to the wing. So another hose is going to magically appear here into the wing where you fill up the airplane with gas. Come on. You going to do another one for me? Come on, don't keep us waiting. Let's go, PMDG. They're taking a long time. Okay, fine, be that way. We're not going to sit here. Oh, there it is, finally. Jeez, man, takes forever. Anyhow, you can see now that it's all connected, you can hit start fueling. And that's usually the first thing that I like to do, is get the fuel flowing, especially if you're going to do a longer flight. That's page 2. Page 3, passengers. Where do we find the passengers? That's going to be on page 3 of the flight plan. There's page 1, 2, and 3. And packs, 127 passengers. So 127, but we don't even have the airplane on now. So we're just going to leave the passengers to do the things that passengers do well, and that's wait. Next page, page 4. This is going to be cargo, and there's 2 cargo holds, forward and aft. Same thing, page 3, just below that, you can see that the cargo is going to be 7,000 pounds of cargo. There is another YouTuber here named B737-800 driver who is a real-world Boeing pilot, and I can't recommend that channel enough. But one of the things that B737 driver says is SimBrief puts a little bit too much cargo into the airplanes. Now, I haven't gone and made the changes, so we're just going to go with 7,000 pounds right now. But that's kind of what you got, is maybe that's going to be something that we need to change in SimBrief someday to not put so much cargo in there. But anyhow, 7,000 pounds. Now, we have 2 cargo holds, so you have to divide it by 2. 6.5, which is 6,000, no, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Yes, I know. 3.5, that's going to be 7. So 3,500 there. 3.5 there. It's early in the morning. I haven't had a lot of coffee yet, and math is hard. Okay, and now what we're going to go ahead and do is do all of the baggage loaders and put all of those in. And so the baggage loaders are coming up to the airplane. The fuel is flowing. And if you go back outside the airplane and start to zoom out just a little bit, you can see up there comes one of the baggage loaders. And you won't actually see suitcases going up, but they do drive up there. Now, if you want to see suitcases and stuff like that and cargo being loaded, one of the things that you could do is go to GSX. But in my case, for a video like that, that takes just a little bit too much time. So that's why I don't do that. Okay, and you can see the baggage loaders are starting to show up. While that's going on, it's time for us to turn power on the airplane. And the on switch for a Boeing 737 is in the upper panel, and it's right over here. So you can see 2 things. You can see standby power, and you can see DC. This is the battery. Okay, and if you look down here, you can see that ground power is available. We're going to start with the battery, and we're going to turn it on, and we're going to guard it. That way we don't turn it off, okay? Now, if we want to be really, really good people, good pilots and stuff, we're going to come over here to the AC page, and we're going to check the voltages here on the AC side and make sure that that's what it is that we expect it to be. And then we would come down here and turn on the ground power. You know, if the voltage isn't right, you could end up having a problem and shorting out something in the airplane, and they cost a lot of money to fix, so there you go. Now, we've got those 2 switches on. The next thing I'm going to do is turn on my position lights. So those are the steady position lights. Those are the wingtip lights that you'll see out here. And that basically lets everybody on the ground know that, hey, there's some idiot in the cockpit pushing buttons here. So you see the green light over there, and on the tail of the airplane there should be a white light. There should be a white light. I know it's there, I just don't see it. Maybe it's just too bright outside right now. And then on this wingtip, there should also be a red light. Oh, maybe these are the white lights. They have them on the wingtips here. So there we go. And so that just lets people know as they're walking by, oh, there's somebody pushing buttons in that airplane. it might move. And so I'm going to just be a little more careful around there. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the emergency exit, and we're going to go ahead and arm the emergency exit lights and guard that too. That way, if there's a problem, the emergency exit lights, everybody who might be on the airplane knows, oh, there's an emergency. We need to do something. Now, I'm going to go over here on the co-pilot's flight management computer, hit menu, and back to FS Actions, back to ground services, and you can still see it's the same thing. We're fueling the airplane, and look at that, 13,681 is already in there. So now I can release the fuel truck, get rid of it. We're done fueling. Looking over here, there are no passengers are still standing by, and it looks like the cargo's ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start loading the cargo, and everything's still coming together very nicely. Now, we're in the European Union right now in Germany, so we don't turn on the APU until 10 minutes before we're going to start powering up the airplane, turning on the engines. We're saving fuel by not running the auxiliary power unit. B, we're not polluting because we don't have that jet engine going on. And C, we're not doing wear and tear on an APU until we absolutely need it. That being said, and one of the things that I don't know that's really modeled here in this airplane is AC from the ground. If you've noticed a lot of jetways, and I don't think, yeah, it's sort of modeled here. So you see this tube? There's a tube here, and you can see there's a little spool underneath the airplane. Let's go over here to the drone cam. You'll see it a little bit better. So this is what provides the air conditioning. Now, I don't know that this is actually something that's modeled right now, but at the real airport, this would be hooked into the airplane, and this would be pumping in either AC, cold air in the summertime, or hot air in the wintertime. And that's how it is that you can make the cabin comfy for passengers without running the AC. Now, if there is one in there and I've somehow missed it, and I very probably have, that's something on my to-do list to learn. Okay, so airplane is essentially powered up, and at this point in time we can come over here, and I'm going to go and return. Yep, cargo is loading. Ground services, I punched the wrong button. Fuel truck is gone. Let's go ahead and start our passengers down the jetway. 127 passengers to go. One of the things that I've gone and done is I mentioned that I use NAVEK. This is my charts. And this is one of those things that if you're going to really get involved in VATS, in flight simming, and get on the VATSIM air traffic control network and stuff like that, this is something that you're going to eventually need. I don't think you need it if you're just starting out, but eventually this is something you're going to want. You can see that we've got a nice little map of Munich Airport. And if you're going to an airport you're not familiar with, you need to go and have a look and see, okay, what runway are we taking off on? Well, we know we're going to be taking off over here on runway 26 left. So generally kind of orienting yourself. Hey, okay, here's our airport here at gate 253, and this is kind of how we're going to do our taxi. Especially if you're going to be in a big VATSIM event. If you've just got 30 seconds. You can also use the actual Jepson-style charts. Now, this one does not have a moving map on there, a little triangle that shows your airplane, but this one does, and this is what the pilots use. So this is a really good thing to have. And then the other thing is this is our departure. So we are going to be departing out here and coming on up here. So maximum 220 knots. We have to be 1,900 feet before we make the turn. And DM 220 knots around here, 250 knots, and out we go. Excuse me for the sniffing. There's going to be a little of that. Allergies are bad. Another important safety tip, especially on VATSIM, you get your clearance. They are always most of the time they say climb via the SID, and they do not tell you what your initial altitude is. Like the real world, air traffic control expects that you read your chart here, and you know that your initial climb clearance is flight level 70 or 7,000 feet. Every airport is different. Every chart can be different, but initially you're going to find something like flight level 70. The other thing that I've gone and done is set up my approach, And right now, Berlin is using runway 25 left for us to come in and just, okay, are all my charts ready to go? Yeah, they're ready to go. So we can start going and doing airplane things. One of the things about this airplane is it does not integrate with SimBrief yet. It's going to do that someday. It's not doing it right now. So one of the things to do at SimBrief is get the SimBrief downloader. And this is my downloader. And if you look down here, you'll see that I've got stuff set up for Flight Simulator 2020 and the Leonardo Mad Dog and the ATR and the PMDG airplanes. All you do once you set up the directories where you put the flight plans, just click one button and look at that. All of our flight data has been downloaded from SimBrief into the airplane. It really is pretty simple. It does take a little bit of time. Each airplane is different to figure out which directory to put the flight plan in, but once you do that, it does make your life incredibly easy. Another add-on that I neglected to put on the list of add-ons is this little thing called Topper. This is basically your takeoff speed calculator. Now, you don't really need this. This gives me one number that I have yet to find in the PMDG, and I will show that to you. That's one of the reasons why I use Topper to get my takeoff speeds. But I'll also show you that in the flight management computer, it also comes up with your speeds, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, well, passengers are walking down the jetway. We need to get the airplane ready to go. So on the pilot side, we're going to hit FMC. I'm going to check that my nav data is correct. It is. I'm going to go ahead and put in our reference airport, and our reference airport is EDDM. So, okay, you see the two little arrows on either side? That's GSX. Turn off GSX, and it's easier to type. EDDM. Those two little arrows are really annoying, but that's what you do. So gate, some airports have gate information readily available to flight management computers. A lot don't. But you can see it's even labeled here, which makes this scenery so cool. We are at gate 254, so let's see if it knows gate 254. And we'll put that in. And look at that, it knows it. So there's our latitude and longitude for this gate. What if it didn't? Go to the next page and just grab that GPS position and click that and put it in the scratch pad. But in this case, we're going to use our gate information, so I'm going to click that latitude and longitude, and there it is in the scratch pad. So now let's go ahead and start aligning the IRS system. No, it doesn't have anything to turn. IRS doesn't mean the tax people in the United States. It is the internal reference system, and it's these two. There's two of them, a left one and a right one. See, left and right. And all you do is turn it to nav and nav. Now come on back down here to the flight management computer and wait for the boxes. And when the boxes show up, there they go. Then what you do is you've already got the latitude and longitude for the gate in here. Put that in the boxes, and the alignment has begun. And you're done doing the alignment. How are we doing with passengers? 92 passengers are aboard. How's baggage? Baggage is loaded. Let's release the baggage carts now and get rid of those. All we have to do is passengers. Now we're going to do the route. And you can already see our departure airport is down here. Let's put it in the origin. And let's go ahead and now request the flight plan. And I have 3 flight plans for the 737 out of Munich. Let's see. And I don't know what it is, but once you click it, it always goes and resets itself. So you got to click it a second time. We are going, though, to Berlin. So EDDB, that's our top flight plan. It's about 258 miles. Let's select that. We are flying Air Berlin, so it is BER is the airline ICAO code. And I am flying as my usual number, flight 441. And look at that, the route uplink is ready. That's because we downloaded the link, the route into the FMC. You do not have to do that. And one of the things that I do suggest is you don't download every flight plan every time. I like to also manually put that in because it reminds me how this flight management computer works, so that I am able to make changes in the middle of a flight, and I remember how to do that. So practicing that is kind of a good thing to do. And now it's uplinked, so you could also go to page 2, and you could see there's your flight plan, AKINI, MAMOR, RUDNO, TIVDA, and ETVIS. I think that that's pretty much it. And if you look at the flight plan on page number 2, you can see there's your flight plan right there, including all of the airways. So you could also be like the real pilots and verify that. I'm not going to make you sit through that. So our flight plan is good. Let's activate it and execute that flight plan. Now we're going to do departure and arrival. Our departure today is going to be runway 26 left. We're doing 26 left. We are departing on the AKINI 1 Sierra departure. And that's it. There's no other transition. Let's execute that. Go back to the index page. Arrival. Right now, we know that Berlin is landing on runway 25 left. So ILS 25 left is our arrival runway. We are going to be doing the ATG 25 left arrival, ATG 25 left right at the top. That's convenient. And now we got a couple of transitions, ATGUP, KETAP, and KILF, and NUCRO, and OGBR. You really got to love some of the waypoint names. They absolutely are crack-ups, and I would think that most people that aren't into airplanes think that airplane people are crazy. So what are we looking for? Well, we're coming in via ATGUP. And that, so you saw all of those names. There's Klaasdorf, NUCRO, ATGUP. These are all of those approaches that we can use here. But we know that it's ATGUP. So let's look and see. Is it there? Yeah, right at the top. And ATGUP. And that's it. That gets us into the arrival. So 25 left, ATGUP. That looks good. There's no transition in, so execute that. Now we're going to look through the legs, and this should be almost a complete flight plan, and see if there's any route discontinuities. The real pilots, they're going to have their list of checkpoints, and they're going to go through with each of these. And they're not, look at this. After ZANM, we have ATGUP. Okay. And this looks, okay, we have another ATGUP here. And we have an ATGUP down here. So one of the things that's happened is we put in our arrival and we put in our star. And there are basically, if you look over here, here's our star, ATGUP, and all of our little waypoints. And if you look at the arrival here, here is an ATGUP transition down here that would take you around here. So obviously there's a little problem. Which one do we want to use? If you look up here at this ATGUP, all of these little waypoints here, that's the little racetrack. The other one, this is the short way in. Chances are the short way is the best way. But we also have the star here. I'm going to go ahead and take this ATGUP and I'm going to put it on top of that ATGUP and execute it. What that did is that just wiped out the other one, and we're going to take the short way in today. On VATSIM and in the real world, you fly your flight plan and wait for air traffic control to make those kinds of decisions. Okay, so all of this looks good, and I think that is going to work for us just fine. So flight plan is great. We are about 10 minutes away from departure, so it's time to fire up the APU. We're going to start by turning on the left aft fuel pump, and that's going to put pressure in the fuel lines. And then we'll come over here, and the APU is right down here. So one click turns it on, another click is a momentary, and that's the starter. You can see the EGT stands for exhaust gas temperature. That's how hot it is back behind the nozzle. And you can see that the APU is starting, and if you come outside, you'll actually hear the APU starting up here. And you can also see a little bit of hot air coming out of the back of the APU too. So we got the APU starting up here, and wow, just in that short amount of time, holy moly, look at how high the EGT has gotten. It usually goes up really high and then starts to cool off a little bit after it starts up. Okay, so all of this is looking pretty good. Let's come on over here. Up, passengers are aboard too. We got to get going. So back to the route page, and let's do our performance initialization. Lots of numbers here. Don't worry, there's not too many to plug in. First, your cruise altitude. We're going to 30,000 feet today. So flight level 300, you just put in a 300 and it's flight level 300. Cruise winds, what's that? This is also your average winds. And this is over on page 1 of the Lido style. See where it says average winds? It's 282 at 13. 282 at 13 knots. 282 /13. And that's all you got to do. There's your cruise winds. Cost index. That's back to the flight plan, and that's in the same area. Cost index for today is 35. So 35. Reserves. Okay, so reserve fuel. This is a combination of 3 numbers. And for your fuel reserve, you have 3 numbers. You have 30 minutes of flying time extra. You have 15 minutes of extra flying time. They call that contingency. And then you've got the amount of fuel that it takes to get to your alternate airport. So that's these 3 numbers right here. That is basically your reserve. So unless you deviate in any way, you should have this amount of fuel in your tanks when you land in Berlin. Now, fortunately, the flight plan adds those numbers for you, and it's down here at your final reserve and alternate, and it's 6,359 pounds, so that's going to be 6.3, and that goes in there. Okay? And let's come on up here. The APU is started. We have pressure. We have pneumatic pressure, air running through the air ducts. So now we can turn on packs for our own air conditioning. And this would be the point where that fictional air conditioning line from the jetway that you saw, they would disconnect that. Let's come on in here, and we're going to set a couple of numbers. So we're going to do our cruise altitude, and that's 30,000 feet. And that is so easy. There it is. A little bit below that is our landing altitude. And you find your landing altitude on your chart here for the airport. And it is, Berlin is 156 feet above sea level. So this is in increments of 150 feet. So 150, you do a little bit of rounding there. And now we've got that set. While we're setting some things and we have our charts out, let's set our departure heading, which on runway 26 left is 260 degrees. So 260 degrees for our heading. 260. Remember our initial cruise altitude from the departure? It was 7,000 feet. So let's go ahead and put in 7,000 feet. And we've got a little bit of the flight guidance control panel, or the autopilot, is set up here too. Passengers are now aboard. All 127 of our passengers are aboard. 0 fuel weight. So just click it, and that's going to do your math for you. And that tells you what your bags and your cargo and everything but fuel is. 124,200 pounds. And so put that in ZFW, and all of that information pops in. Now let's go to execute that, and N1 limits. Selected temperature. Okay, so this is sort of like, this is also known as a D rate. This basically tells the engines it's either hotter or cooler to make you use a little less fuel, a little less wear and tear on the engine, but it's going to take more runway to take off. This is the one reason why it is that I use topper, because I can't find a place to get a better number for that. So EDDB. No, we're not Berlin. We are in München. There we go, Munich. Cool. Runways. We know that we are going to be blasting off on runway 26 left. 26 left. Intersection. We're going to do, well, we have options. We could do intersections here too. So we could take off at intersection B13, B14, B12. What options do we have? Intersections B12 and B13. Let's try B13. Let's do an intersection departure so we don't use quite as much runway. Conditions. It is dry in Munich right now. Winds. Right now, the latest METAR that I got, and there's several places to get this. You can get it on VATSIM. If you are not on VATSIM like I am right now, you could get a web browser and you could go to something like FlightAware. And you could go in and type in your airport, EDDM. There are a lot of different places to go and get these things. And here is, oh wow, we got a little bit of rain around the real world. And you'll also see the airplanes as they're taking off. Yep, same runways, but go all the way to the bottom. And you can see, here is the latest Munich weather. Oh, and there's showers here too. I will usually copy that and put that into what I call my flight strip. These are my notes. And a copy of my notes is in the description, so you can copy and paste this into your own notepad and start using it. Okay, so now we've got the latest weather information for Munich. So the winds are 250 at 10 degrees. 250 at 10. The outside air temperature here in Munich is 14 degrees. And the altimeter setting in Munich is 1009. I always do a little bit of a derate here. So my rating is down a little bit to save even more fuel. Flaps 5 is going to be pretty good. Bleeds are on. And the anti-ice is off right now. We're in a heat wave in summer in the northern hemisphere. So there you go. Takeoff weight. Well, we do know that 124,000 pounds or so is what we had for our zero fuel weight. So a little bit more. Our estimated takeoff weight, according to the flight plan, is 134,285. That's actually the number that I use. 134,285. I am not doing this 100% correctly, but that's just the number that I'm using at the moment. As I like to say on these videos, this isn't about the right way or the wrong way. This is what's working for me to get those of us that are just getting started ready to go. There are a lot more real numbers, but there's also a couple of holes in some of the numbers that we actually get in Flight Sim too that aren't 100% accurate. The real world pilots would never do something like this. And I'm also going to change my type. We're a 737-800, and I'm going to calculate. And now this has given me a selected temperature of 56 degrees. Well, the actual temperature is 14, so we're saying it's a little warmer than it is out there. So 56. What is it that you should do? Well, if you don't have topper, this gives you that outside air temperature right now at the airplane. Just add 20 to it or something for the moment, and that'll get the job done. Okay, I also like to derate once to take off -1. And then we go to our takeoff page. I know that I'm going to be taking off on flaps 5. That's what I usually do, so flaps 5. Now for center of gravity, in this case, if you just click it, it's going to actually give you the number that the airplane has. So you don't have to calculate it or find it outside. So put that in CG, and now this is giving you your trim setting for takeoff. It says 5.6, and this just makes your takeoff roll a little bit nicer. So that's probably about as close as you're going to get. And then V speeds. Well, the airplane is suggesting 138 for V1. Topper says 139. So you can kind of see you're getting really good information without using something like a topper. And it works pretty good. My rotate is 140. And 155 is my V2. That's a little different from the 141 that the airplane gave me. Let's also take that 155 and we're going to put it here for our initial speed off the runway. So 155. Once I get these three numbers put in up here, this is when I turn on my flight directors. That just says up, autopilot is set and ready to go. Our altimeter setting for takeoff, we're going to first of all change it from inches of mercury to hectopascals. And 1009. And our altimeter is now set for takeoff too. We're getting really close to departure here. And in fact, it's time to come on over here and we're going to close the main door. Our load sheets are aboard. Everything's cool. So I'm going to hit return, go to doors, and we're going to close the 1L door. That's the door. The furthest up is the number 1 door, and it's on the left side. That's what 1L stands for. And you can see that the door is closed. You may remember that I used something called GSX to get my jetway. We're going to get GSX to push us back. So GSX, I'm going to go prepare for pushback and departure. And what this is going to do is retract my jetway for me. We also need to get rid of the ground power cart. But before we do that, let's go ahead and turn the APU generator on. So the APU generator, the generator bus is off, but it's blue.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback.
We have just gone in and transferred the electric load to the APU, and I'm just going to go and hit off. Some airplanes you need to be sure to do that. Sometimes you don't. Some airplanes do. Some it depends. I just turn it off. One of the reasons is if you don't turn it off, there might be some electricity in there, and when the ground crew goes to pull it out of the airplane, there's a big bad spark in some airplanes. Our ground crew is getting us ready to go, so we need to be ready to do things too. First of all, the doors are closed, so seatbelts are going to go on. And all of that's looking good. And that looks nice. Let's go up here. It's summertime. I have not turned on my windshield heaters. My probe heaters I don't turn on until after the ground crew is clear of the nose of the airplane, and my yaw damper is off too. And all that's good. We are getting ready for pushback, so I'm going to turn on the anti-collision lights. Those are the red lights on the top and bottom of the airplane, and that's going to go on too. Looking down here, let's see, we are in the European Union, so that usually means a squawk code of around 1,000, and we're going to come over here and start squawking transponder. Now it wants to know nose right, nose left, quick pushback, straight pushback. What do you want to do, Captain? So for this, if you look at your charts, we are over here. This one's a little cleaner. Well, we're going to this runway, so I want to go nose right, tail left. Nose right, tail left. Okay, that let them know which way we want to push. And our final little checks here, everything I think is pretty much ready to go. Oh, look at this. We have not turned on our parking brakes. And our chocks are still in place. So push your brake pedals all the way down, toe pedals, and then pull the brakes. And that's good. If you have a chair, you might want to lock the chair in with rudder pedals so you don't tilt back. Okay, and then come on over here. Let's run through the ground page one time. Page 4, baggage handling. Carts are clear. Passenger services, jetway is clear. Airplane services, the lavatory truck is not hooked up. That's an important safety tip. We don't want the blue juice leaking all over the ground. And everything's here. Ooh, ground power. Release the ground power truck.
Release parking brakes.
And let's also come over here, and I'm going to remove my chocks. Chocks are removed. Ground power is disconnecting. So our ground power is going away, and you can see the little chocks are gone from the airplane. We are almost ready to do our pushback. Everything looks good up here. Doors are closed. This is when I turn on my electric hydraulic pumps. I heard that from a real-world 737 pilot. They usually don't turn those on until the door closes. And everything else is looking good for the moment. While we're waiting, we could come down here and we could go and turn this main panel light up, and that's backlighting on the instrument panel. I find it's a little easier to just see the labels on the panel if you turn up the backlighting. It's also known as integrated lighting. And we've got one up here.
Release parking brakes.
I think we're ready to go. Everything's clear. We have cleared all the electrical connections. Shall we go? So look down here. Push your toe brakes all the way down, and that's what releases your parking brakes.
All engines clear. Start at will.
And our airplane should start pushing back. And out we go. Now then, I usually have a departure time of 35 minutes after the hour. I'm spending a little more time talking, so you can see that the current time here at the airplane is 13:52. We're actually a little late right now. I point that out because there are some VATSIM events where you actually have to push back on time on your schedule, like cross the pond and cross the land and cross the ditch, those really big VATSIM events, your departure time is an important time. Okay, so it's time to start engines. First things first, let's go over here, and we're going to go ahead and turn on the rest of our fuel pumps. Fuel pumps are on. Now to start the engines, we have to turn the packs off because we need that pneumatic air pressure to spin the motors around before we do fuel. And usually I think on this 737 you start engine number 2 first. So ground start. Look down here. You see the starter valve has opened. And then look down here and you see N2 is going up. And we're looking for that number to say 25%. And then we're going to turn the fuel cutoff on. 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Fuel. And then if you decide to go outside the airplane, you can see the engine spin up. You can hear the engine spin up. And if you're an airplane geek, those are cool things to do. If you wonder when they're going to stop pushing you back, when your ground crew who's walking along with you stops, that's a good indicator that they're about ready to stop your pushback.
Set parking brake.
Look at that, almost on schedule. So again, push your toe brakes all the way in. Pull the brake.
Waiting your confirmation for good engine start.
Okay, so technically we don't have a complete engine start until the starter valve light goes out, but we have one now. So we're going to come over here and hit the GSX button twice. That's going to get the menu and confirm an engine start. And then I'm going to hit the GSX button a third time to get rid of those 2 double arrows. And now they're going to go and remove the gear pin. They are going to disconnect the ground cart. And we're going to go ahead and start another engine. So ground start engine number 1. Look down here. Starter valve is open. Look down here. And same drill as before. As N2 goes up, we're also, the real pilots are monitoring the oil pressure and the oil temperature. If all of a sudden those numbers start going down, you got an oil leak, and that's a problem. 25%. And then if you go back in the cabin and you turn the sound up, you hear the engine start, and it's pretty cool.
Tow truck disconnected.
And then the guy shouts at you about that as you're listening in.
Left is clear, right is clear.
Okay, so best laid plans on that. Okay, but the engine sounds that they have modeled in the PMDG are really quite remarkable. And everything else is looking pretty good. That engine starting up, that click that you just heard, that was the starter. It's now off, so we can go ahead and turn the packs on. That's air conditioning for the passengers at this point. With that, I'm going to shift the generators off the APU to the engines. We're going to turn on the windshield heaters. They're clear under the nose of the airplane. And I'm going to turn on the yaw damper. And I usually monitor generator 1 up on the electrical panel. If you see, our ground crew has stepped over here. They're holding the gear pin. While we were doing stuff, they also waved at us. You can go and release your parking brakes after you get that wave, and they start to walk away. Otherwise, GSX will yell at you. And for us, we have our engines turned on. Let's see here. The packs are on. We're also going to turn off the cross bleed. We're also going to turn off the APU bleed. We're going to turn off the APU. Nope, we're not. The generators are off. We're going to turn off the APU. APU is off. And we're going to turn on the taxi light, and pretty much everything on the upper panel is good. The last thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and ring the bell, let the cabin crew know that we're going to start rolling the airplane around. Next thing we could do is we could do flaps 5. So how about flaps 5 for takeoff? 1, 2, 5. If you go back and look, you'll see the leading edge slats on the wings start to go down. And you'll also see the flaps go down there. Now's a good time to check your speed brakes. Speed brakes are working. That's good to go too. I'm going to set my auto brakes to RTO. And it's time to go. Nose lights on. Parking brakes are off. With the 737, you are going to have to run up your engines a little bit to get going. Once you get going, then the airplane will do a really good job of engine idle taxi. Unless you're really heavy, then you may have to keep a little bit of engine to keep you going. Let's go ahead and do control checks. You're going to notice my airplane swings around a little bit. I've got a bad controller. It's getting old, but once I go and move all that around, it fixes itself. Add a little bit more power to keep us going. So maybe we're a little heavier. And if you get a chance in Flight Sim, whenever you get a chance, look outside. The views are really pretty amazing. I mean, this is a really nicely done airport. Berlin is really nicely done too. And as we go over, there's a bridge here. So there are roadways that go into the airport, and airplanes taxi over roadways. The bridge is particularly well done on this one. And if you're flying at night, it's even more amazing. So if you look over here, you see there's our bridges and our roadways going underneath the bridge. Like I said, particularly well done here. Okay, and we're going a little too fast. And we'll look over here. Remember, we're also doing an intersection departure. And a nice turnaround here. With the Boeing 737, you primarily taxi with the rudder pedals. If you've got a sharp 90-degree turn, then maybe you'll use the nose wheel tiller. But they say you do mostly taxiing with the nose wheel. Coming over here, I'm going to put all of my engine instruments in the top, and that leaves this one blank. And here is our turn for the intersection that we're going to depart from. Engines are idle. This was our intersection that we chose. Now, sometimes these things change while you're taxiing. And this is a two-person cockpit. So, okay, there is the Category 3 ILS hold line. We're going to go up to the main hold line because nobody's doing the ILS Category 3 at the moment. Okay, some other things I'm going to do here. I'm going to turn on traffic. I'm going to turn on airports and data. I'm going to monitor my taxi and stop at the hold short line. And that's good too. Let's come on down here. Everything is good. Let's come up here. We're going to do engines are going to be continuous for takeoff. I'm going to do one more cabin call. Hey, we're going to fly now. Everything looks good to go down here. So traffic, airports, and data. ATC's just called. Line up and wait. So we're going to go ahead and move those throttles forward a bit. And we're going to come over here. And as we enter the runway, this is when I go and shift the position lights from steady to strobe and steady. Those are the little white lights that you start to see flashing as the airplane usually enters the runway. Real pilots, before they start moving on the runway, of course, they're going to look left, they're going to look right, make sure nobody's on final approach. There's two things that you're going to get, either Berlin 441, taxi on the runway, taxi and takeoff, you know, clear for takeoff on runway 27 right, or is it the left, 26 left, or they may say taxi on to 26 left and hold, or line up and wait is what they'll tell you. So we're lining up and waiting this time. And they say go, so transponder goes to Terra, and everything's good here. Landing lights can go on. Oops, got to do both of them. It's time to go. Auto throttle is now on. I'm also going to turn on LNAV and VNAV. Should have done that a little bit sooner. And let's go. This case, I usually roll my throttles up to about 40%. So there's 40%. When the engines are stable, I hit my takeoff button. And so it's going to automatically set my thrust. The cool thing about this is the takeoff airspeed callouts. We're going to get one in just a sec. 80 knots. Look down, check your airspeed. Yep, good. And all you have to do with the PMDG is look down the runway. It's going to call you. Rotate. V1. It's so nice. I really wish that were something that happened with all airplanes. Gear up. There goes our landing gear. And Air Berlin flies again. Okay, how are we doing on our flight directors? Well, we're climbing a little bit fast as usual for me. But I also spend too much time looking outside the window. The real pilots are going to concentrate on the job. And this is all looking good. It's a busy day in the neighborhood. I need help from the autopilot because we're also, if you're on VATSIM ATC, you're changing radios. So maybe I just turned on my autopilot a little bit sooner than the real pilots would. But you know what? We need the extra help. Flaps can start going up. There goes some flaps. Airplanes got us. Our autopilots got us. There's our turn. How's our airspeed? Up. Flaps need to go up. How about those leading edge slats now? There goes the leading edge slats going up. There they go. And flaps are up. Now we're going to do landing gear off and turn off the auto brake. Passing 4,000 feet. ATC just called, said 17,000 feet. And I always like to keep my heading bug pointed straight up. If the autopilot fails, at least it points me in the direction that I've got to go. And a nice departure. Oh, we're getting a little bit of a bounce here. Passing 6,000 feet. The transition level here, I did not set that in the flight management computer. Transition level here is 5,000 feet. So there's 6. Altimeters need to go to standard. So standard, and one of the things I also like about the PMDG, you can set one altitude, one altimeter, and it changes them all. It ruins a little bit of immersion for some, but I just have, it's so much nicer. We're one person in a cockpit, so to change all 3 is an annoyance sometimes. Now, my altimeter setting here is yellow. That's wrong. That's because I did not set that in my flight management computer for the departure. So, bad on me for that one. Econ climb is going pretty good, though. Let's come over here, and I'm going to go ahead and put progress on this side. We're 284 miles out of Berlin. Passing 9,000 feet. This will change when we get to 18,000 feet because that's the altimeter setting transition in the United States. It's a default in most airplanes. There's 10,000 feet. Landing lights. Taxi light. Let's do a 10,000 foot cabin call. Flight attendants are going to basically say, nope, seatbelt sign's still on. You can't get up. And we're also going to go over here, and I'm going to turn the starters off. And then let's see, is the cabin climbing? It is. So cabin is pressurizing. We're not killing the passengers, which I guess is a good thing. Less lawyers, I guess. And let's also, as we go out here, I'm going to start increasing the range on my map. ATC called, climb and maintain 25,000 feet. Usually they call a little bit later than I'm doing it in this video. Oh, and we have a new heading, 051 degrees. 051. Always like to keep that straight up. Passing 12,000. Up, all of a sudden now this has changed from yellow to green. We're not at 18,000 feet. That's unusual. I didn't do it. And everything else is looking good. So we're 50 miles from our top of climb. Passing 14,000 feet. And ATC has said, climb to your final cruise, 30,000. We'll just let the airplane do its thing. All is right with the world. Our engine instruments are good. As we're slowly making our way out of here, let's go ahead and have a look at progress. Berlin Flight 441 is 274 miles out of Berlin, Germany. We should be landing at about a 1454 Zulu, and when we land, we are expecting 11,900 pounds fuel in the tank. Remember that final reserve and alternate number we were yapping about earlier? I need 6,359 pounds. I always add a little bit of extra fuel. So, on top of what SimBrief says, especially if I'm going to be on VATSIM, and if you're going into a VATSIM event, holy cats, do you need to add extra fuel. If you're sitting on the ground with a 20-minute ground stop or something like that and you're burning fuel, you're not going to have enough to make it to where you're going to go. How do you know how much fuel you need? Well, at the time of takeoff, a number you should check is TOF fuel. Has nothing to do with your golf game. 13,181 pounds was my takeoff fuel. That's what I had to have in my tanks before I took off. And I was a bad pilot. I didn't check that number with the actual gas gauge, which was down here. And so if we were in a big VATSIM event, I would have checked that. I'm a lot better there. I do that then. We're at 11.6 right now, so we're in pretty good shape at the moment. And I also read the wrong number for you just a second ago. That's how much fuel we have. When we get to Berlin, which is now 265 miles away, the computer says we'll have 8,500 pounds of fuel, so I read the wrong number. I'm reading all sorts of wrong numbers today. Gee, you think I hadn't had any coffee yet this morning. So again, we need 6,003. Flight management says 8.5. We've got more fuel than we need. Passing 20,000 feet. I'm going to do a cabin call, let the cabin crew know that they can get up now. And get ready to start pouring glasses of Diet Coke, which they hate pouring. And now we're getting ready to make a turn. You can also use your moving map here. And you can see we've done our flight. There's MGEP and there is AKINI. And out we go. So the airplane did a really good job. And then I'll go ahead and just use this as a nice little moving map. And that's really nice to have, especially in some of the older airplanes like the new F-28, which is VOR to VOR navigation, which is, oh my gosh, you think that this is busy? Wait until you fly that thing. I think there's a video here on YouTube that I've attempted. It is a humbling airplane. And all is right with the world. We are squawking. The engines don't appear to be on fire. Cabin is pressurizing. I can't help but think I've forgotten something, but I don't know what. I always do. Now, one way for me to not be so worried about that is if I were to use the checklists a lot better than I do. Passing 23,000 feet, seatbelts are going to go to auto. Although I think the cabin crew would have appreciated if we'd left it on a little bit longer for them to get the drink carts out. And here is our top of climb starting to show up. And you can see this little thing, the little course heading here, flapping around. We've got a little bit of turbulence here. I think I'm going to do seatbelts on. And probably you'll see the wing flapping a bit too. I would guess that's because of thunderstorms possibly in Germany right now. Okay, so here is our top of climb. It's going to be a while before we get to top of descent. So remember how it was that I was talking a little bit about, I'm going to stop the video? We're going to stop the video here. Over here on the cruise page, you'll see that eventually we will get a top of descent indicator on here. But right now we've still got a little climb to do. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now just because all we're going to do is climb and cruise. So when your flight management computer says 80 miles to top of descent, start your video again, okay? In the meantime, Air Berlin is flying again. Hey, we're back and we're a little bit past that 80 miles of top of descent that I promised you about. Had a little bit of a real world thing go down here, so I'm a little bit late, but I think we can figure it out. There's 50 miles. So really one of the first things that we absolutely positively must do is check the weather in Berlin. Let's do it the same way we did the last time. Let's go ahead and come over here. And I like to do this for two ways, EDDB. So here's Berlin-Brandenburg. And as we look down here, one of the things we get to see is a weather map, but we also get to see which runways they're using. And okay, the runways that we're planning on still work in the real world. With that, we can come down all the way to the bottom. And once again, I'm going to go and grab, and I usually grab everything up until the tempo. So we'll go and put this in here. And there is our Berlin arrival weather. So that looks good. And basically what this is telling us is our current arrival plans are going to be fine. So first things first, usually the thing that I like to do is get that ILS frequency in. Even if it's a beautiful sunny day, one of the things that I like to do is have the ILS standing by. So our ILS for this runway is 109.5. So let's see, 109.5. And that's in our nav1. And I'm going to make that active. Now, if we were on a big VATSIM event, you know what I'd be doing? I'd come over here and I would also get the ILS for runway 25 right, because they could shift us over there. And if I have that ILS already plugged in here and ready to go, I have to hit one button and we're all set and ready to do that. The other thing that I'm going to do is look and see if there's a VOR. And there's a VOR right over the runway, and it's the Schoenfeld VOR 114.4. So let's go ahead and grab that one. And 114.4, and I'm going to put that in nav2. That just gives me one more DME that usually shows up 114.4. That usually shows up before the ILS, and that should pop in down here. Okay, top of descent is 40 miles out. Let's look at our arrival here. And as we're coming on in to the ILS, as we come around here, at ATGUP, let's see, on the arrival itself, altitude, so above 6,000 feet, above 8,000 feet, 220 knots. Over here, platform altitude is 3,000 feet. We're going to be busy. Let's just put in platform altitude for now, for 3,000 feet. Later we could go and worry about our actual arrival, but I'm a little late. Okay, inbound course. So the inbound course on the ILS is going to be 245 degrees. That's the number right here by your ILS frequency. So 245 degrees. Let's put that in. 245 degrees. And then the last thing is going to be minimums. One of the reasons I just wanted to get an altitude in for our descent is because this airplane automatically starts your descent for you. And like I said, we're a little bit busy here, so I just wanted to make sure the airplane started to descend. And at the bottom here, you can see a Category 1 decision height is 349 feet. So let's go to minimums, and that's over here. And so we're going to switch from radio to baro, and we're going to change a number that's going to appear down here underneath the artificial horizon, and 349 is what we're going to dial in. 349. So there's 272. It's a little awkward, but it works for the pilots. 349. 349. Okay, so now that's set. So baro is set to 349, and then the last thing you get to do, and this is one of the things that I really like about the Boeing, is you can preset your altimeter. And that altimeter is 1005. So 1005 in the altimeter. It's a small little white number that is under standard, but now 1005 hectopascals. All we have to do is at transition, press the button. Speaking of transition, let's come over here to the descent page. Let's hit the forecast page. See how the transition level is set to flight level 180. Our transition coming in here is 5,000 feet. So 5,000. I think it's 6,000 coming in. Invalid entry. Oh, I had one too many zeros. It's not 50,000 feet. Whoops. Okay, and then what we'll do is we could request the descent winds. The descent winds are going to come with you. Remember when I downloaded the flight plan with the SimBrief downloader? That's where the descent winds are going to come in. So we're going to wait on that a second. Jeopardy song. And we're going to wait a little bit longer. There it is. Forecast uplink ready. Load. And we're going to wait a little bit longer. I thought we were about to start our descent. I saw the throttles going down. And you can see there's our winds. Let's execute the descent winds. All of that is in. Back to the cruise page. Oh, we're 7 miles away. We actually got it all done with 7 miles to spare. How about that? That's pretty good. Okay, everything else is pretty well set for the moment. Nothing to worry about up here. We'll leave the seatbelt. Oh, I left the seatbelt sign on the whole time. Sorry. Hope nobody had too much, beverage before the flight. And we are 4.3 miles from top of descent. And a nice little turnout here. A beautiful day to fly over Germany, but it does look like we're coming into an area of showers and thunderstorms. And my guess is if we were in a 737 at 30,000 feet flying over Germany into Berlin, this is what it would look like. And in fact, I always like to tell the story of watching one of those YouTube videos that somebody, basically took, of their full flight. They'll put their iPhone in the window and just record the view out the window, the whole flight, and put it on YouTube. One day I was watching those, watching one just, had it on the computer here while I was making lunch or something. I looked up and I thought, oh wow, that looks just like Microsoft Flight Simulator. Well, the reverse is. I mean, Microsoft Flight Simulator looks like the world. It's that good. Ah, you hear the engine spooling down? About ready to start our descent. I think that the PMDG sound people probably have one of the best engine sound sets of any airplane. And our descent has begun. Down we go. This will, of course, keep an eye on our constraints going in. And yeah, we did blow off the star, so we're just doing the transition from ATGUP. I need to reset this. 050. And our transition looks particularly good. We are descending fairly nicely. Our speeds are good. The next thing we could do is go to initref. I usually am doing flaps 30 landings in the 737. That may be completely wrong. That may be totally wrong. But it's about the only way that I get a decent landing out of this thing. I will go to flaps 40 if it's a ridiculously short runway. But other than that, Flaps 30 seems to work for me. Now it's probably a good time, as we're starting to come into Germany, for me to say a big thank you for watching the video. I hope that this helps out. I always like to say that this is not about the right way versus the wrong way. This is what is working for me in Flight Simulator. Flight Simulator is changing. It's not, it reflects the real world, but it's still, you got to cut a few corners here and there. So this is what works for me, and I hope that if you're getting started in flight simming, this is something that's going to work for you too. I am still really new here on YouTube, so I'm still reading every comment that comes in, and I'm so grateful. I'm also grateful if you decide to hit the like button. That would be really nice of you too, so that I can grow this channel. I have turned online content creation into a full-time biz right now. I'm one of those people, like a lot of people who got laid off, and I'm trying to make a go of starting my own little business. So likes and shares really do help. If you really like this, please come on over and join us on the Spy Flight. And if you really liked it, you please subscribe. If you liked some of the in-depth things that you saw me doing, I've also launched a Patreon page, which I do before every Twitch Spy Flight. About 6 hours before, I do a complete flight briefing over on there. And I've also got to start working on figuring out a way to do some live streams to Patreon. And I'd like to try and do a live stream over here on YouTube sometime as well. There is also Ko-fi, if you find that and you really liked it for coffee or something like that. I always appreciate an extra cup of coffee. And from there, I will stop with those usual silly things that YouTubers say and concentrate on the flight. We are passing 23,000 feet. Seatbelts are on. Let's do a cabin call. Let the flight attendants know that they need to start thinking about sitting down. Everything is preset here. All we have to do is watch our descent deviation. And the deviation has nothing to do with my sense of humor. It means how high or how low we are on our arrival. And you can see the little pink diamond here is right in the center. We're only about 40 feet. Yeah, we're pretty close to our optimum descent path. Ah, coffee. And everything's good in here. There are two actual descent deviation meters. They're both the same. The one of them that I just showed you, that's this one over here. But if you look over here next to the altitude and the artificial horizon, this is also descent deviation. So we have two opportunities to prevent being deviant. And that's my attempt to do stupid jokes. As we come on in, one of the things that you'll set is speed brakes. They are now armed. And as we come in, I'm going to set the auto brakes. I usually do auto brakes 3 in this airplane, unless it's a really long runway that we're going to have to roll out to the end. Now, a real-world pilot might be saying, oh, wait a minute, we never set those things this early. And that real-world pilot is absolutely right. Here's the deal. We are one person in a 2-person cockpit, and if you're on VATSIM, and if you're doing VATSIM in Germany, where there is a lot of ATC and a lot of controllers, and you got to be on your game, if you can set a few things a little bit sooner than maybe you would do, that's going to help you out in the long run. Now, let's say we're coming in here, and I've preset my speed brakes here, right? So they're auto for landing. But let's say, you know, all of a sudden ATC calls and said, you're not descending fast enough, you need to slow it down. So you might need your speed brakes like right now. Well, once you use them, your speed brake is not going to be armed. So you have to remember to rearm the speed brakes. But you might notice that I'm doing things sooner than you need to do them, but that's just to try and get some things done here in the simulated cockpit, so I'm ready for the next event. Because invariably, if I didn't get some stuff done, that'll be the time that ATC has got 3 frequency changes. Oh, and a runway change too. Would you be, okay? you kind of get what I'm meaning. Plus the other thing, by getting stuff done early, I now have an opportunity to come back in the cabin and just take in the view. I'm obviously a little bit of an airplane geek and a travel geek and stuff, and I don't get to do much with airplanes and travel anymore after being laid off and stuff, so this is about as good as it gets for me. And it's actually pretty good. I mean, the view outside the airplane is really, really awesome here. I have gone and done some flights over things that I previously traveled as a passenger, and it looks really great. There is this one canyon lake that is south of town where I live that I always see on a departure going out, and if you go and do the departure out of my hometown airport and set yourself up in a seat, you look down at that lake and say, oh wow, that looks just like it. So it really is kind of a nice treat for me. Okay, we could go ahead and we need to bring the map in a little bit. We are on 80 miles. I'm going to do 40 miles now, and our map is looking pretty good. We got a couple of slowdowns coming up here that we need to make sure the airplane does its thing. We are 15,000 feet. It's handling the speed perfectly. How's our fuel? Let's say we were on VATSIM and it's getting crowded. We might have to do a hold or vector because of traffic. How we doing? Well, let's see. The gas gauge says we have 8.9. And over here it says we are 58 miles from Berlin. We should be landing at 1454 Zulu, and we should have 8,500 pounds of fuel in the tank when we land. Remember over here, the final reserve and alternate is 6.3, so we've got more than enough fuel should ATC call up and say, you've got a vector, you've got to deviate. Which does happen, especially in the UK and the EU, because there's a lot of airplanes flying in a smaller airspace than there is, say, in the United States. So there's a lot more volume. And in VATSIM, there might be even more volume than in the real world. Here is our next turn. So we're going to go ahead and reset this up here too. One of the things to expect on VATSIM, though, is they might slow you down a little bit sooner than you expect, so you might have to slow down a little bit sooner. If there is an airplane that's 5 miles ahead of you, they may slow you down or vector you out to build in some space. As we come into the airport, you probably noticed as I zoomed in to look just a sec, though, that simulator did a little freeze, a little mini freeze. That usually happens on approach. So as you're coming into approach or getting closer to the ground, you want to look out the window and see, oh wow, there's the Brandenburg Gate. There's, you know, there's a really cool town over there. You're going to want to do that, and it's okay. But especially in a VATSIM event, because the other thing that's happening is as you get closer to your airport, if you have a special pay-where scenery for the airport or something like that, it's going to be loading about now, and that's going to cause those little hesitations to come on in. So I try to remind myself not to do too much unnecessary zoom in and zoom out kinds of things, because it's the sim's getting a little bit busy. And there's 10,000 feet. So it's almost time to do another cabin call. Flight attendants, seats for landing, sterile cockpit, landing lights, preset those taxi lights, and engines to continuous start in case we have to go around. And yes, on VATSIM events, you do need to be ready to go around. Our speed should be slowing it down too, and it is. So getting down to 250 knots at 10,000 feet. We're getting pretty close. So we're 20 miles from making this turn. I'm going to probably want to slow down even more. I think I'd like to go to 210 about now. And in fact, ATC might actually have us do that too. And in this case, we're going to need the help of the speed brakes to help us with our slowdown. So here comes speed brakes. And there goes our speed down to 210. So you might at this point say, well, you said you might need speed brakes. Why did you pre-arm them early? If I can get stuff done early, it just makes more sense. There's 230. Placard speeds for flaps. We could do flaps 1 at 250. So how about some leading edge slats to help us keep a handle on the on that slowdown. There we are, getting even closer. And how about speed brakes up? As soon as you put your speed brakes up, rearm. And flaps 2. There goes some more flaps. You can see wind turbines all over Germany. There's these big wind turbine farms out in the water, which is great to see. My flaps are going all the way out. I think I just did something wrong. I wanted flaps 5. Okay. I don't know why it's all upset with me there. I must have hit an extra button. It wants landing gear. Let's go ahead and give it landing gear. Okay. I triggered some sort of a thing. I must have hit the button. My buttons are getting a little bit old on my TCA Thrustmaster controller. I'm going to have to replace it soon. And we're getting ready to make our turn to final. Usually when they start telling you to turn to final, you should expect them to say something like, reduce your speed to Mach to 180 knots, maintain 180 knots till 5 miles DME, cleared for the ILS, runway 25 left, something like that. So we're at 210 knots as we kind of come around here. Gears down a little bit earlier than I normally do, but that's okay. And we're getting ready to make our turn around here. Also, up here, we now have this little indicator, IBSW, 245 degrees. That is our ILS, IBSW, 245 degrees. In other words, the airplane is now picking up the ILS. We're 20 miles out. And so we've got DME there, which is really nice to have. And the real pilots, as soon as that pops up, one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to take a look at that and they're going to verify that with their chart, whether it's the paper chart or the electronic chart. Make sure that the airplane has dialed in the proper ILS. Otherwise, there could be a problem. Okay, so we got our speed here. We're going to go down to 3,000 feet. And it's almost time to make our turn. And even though I just did that big old yammering ying about don't zoom around too much, you get to look out the window a little bit and enjoy the scenery. There's some more wind turbines and a really nice turn. The cabin itself on the PMDG is actually modeled pretty nicely. It's not as the upper panel here, the passenger panel, it's not quite as well done as other airplanes, but the galley itself is like really flat. If you look here, you see the coffee machine's flat. That's to save system resources. So don't necessarily have to have the perfect coffee machine here. Let's go ahead and get this heading bug around. At this point in time, we're getting closer and closer, so ATC is going to probably say something along the lines of 180 knots till 5 mile DME. So 180 knots, 180. And now we can do flaps 10. Let's see if it does flaps 10 or keeps going. Yep, it did flaps 10. I must have held it down a little bit too long or something. So 180 knots until 5 miles DME. We are heading 271 degrees. Gear is down 3 green. Auto brakes, speed brakes are set. Landing lights are set. We're set to continuous start. Passengers are all in their seats. Passing 5,000 feet. Transition's going to be at 5. So this thing within about 200 feet should turn yellow. This thing should turn yellow. There's 4,800. It should come on. Man, you airplanes. Come on, we're on YouTube. You got to do it. Is that what we said transition was? Let's go to forecast. 5,000 feet. You're just being mean. Oh, look at that. Of course, we look away and it changes. See? Okay. Altimeter standard. Airplanes. Jeez. Okay. We do have glide slope and localizer indicated. Let's get a little bit of help from the approach. Usually what they'll tell you to start those sometimes is clear to join the localizer, so you could hit this button and have it automatically do it for you. I'm just going to go and hit the approach button so that it sets up our glide slope and localizer for us. Again, it's to do as get the airplane to do work for you. As we get ready to make the turn, there's our turn coming in on the ILS, coming in on the airport, runway 25 left. We have 2 high speeds. We're going to try and hit Mach 3 and go back into the terminal. This is also where I'm going to go and start zooming this in. And if you are on VATSIM, if you can just take 1 second and figure out what gate you might go to. We're going to go for gate Bravo 12. If you're on VATSIM, once you get off the runway and you are super duper busy, and they say ground point 7 on, contact ground, one of the things that ground might ask is say parking. They do not mean for you to do the old VATSIM joke and repeat the word parking. They don't have much of a sense of humor about that. But what they do want to know is, do you have a gate in mind to go to? If you can say Bravo 13, that's going to just make your day a little bit go a little bit faster. So I've got Bravo 12. I've got B12 already set in there. Okay? And we're almost set here. And now here's our turn to final. And some nice forests. And the Autobahn. And come on around here. One of the other incredibly cool things about Flight Sim is it is so uniquely international. And if you are one of those people that doesn't get to travel as much, but this kind of opens the door a little bit for some international culture, which is just awesome. And everything is looking pretty good here. We are now set. The airplane is established on the ILS. Our speeds are good to go. We know that we're going to be, our VAP speed is going to be 142. I'm going to add to it 145 as our landing speed. We are 10 miles from the runway. Last thing is we're going to click the map to the 10-mile range. And then I'm going to keep an eye on this arrow. You see that this is showing our winds are 280 at 34. Holy moly, this is going to be a big... You could actually see we're a little bit crabby coming in. The nose is not pointed towards the runway. It's kind of pointed into the wind right now. So we need to be ready for a little bit of a crosswind landing. And here's some of those incredible lakes around Berlin. Here comes the runway. There's 7 miles from the runway. Remember, ATC, maintain 180 knots until 5 miles DME. That seems to be almost a universal. Again, our speed is 145. We're established on the ILS. I'm still letting the autopilot do the work. I still have things that I need to do that perhaps the co-pilot would be taking care of for us. So while it's great to disconnect the autopilot, and I like doing that too, especially in a big VATSIM event, I'm gonna let it do the work until I really can take over. Okay, there's 5 miles DME. 145, is that what we said? 145. Yeah, 145 is good. Another notch of flaps, that should be 15. Airplane slowing it down. Let's see, I have the Airbus style of throttles here, so I'm gonna move my throttles up about halfway to CL on the Airbus throttles and get ready to take over from the auto throttle. And flaps are now out. Nope, nope, nope. Flaps 30, not 40. I've got a problem with that button, I think. Okay, we're 5 miles out. If we were on VATSIM, we would be talking to tower. I would be looking at vPilot right now and seeing, is there a ground control? And if there's a ground control, I'm gonna put that in my standby radio frequency. So 121.9, because this is a time when you're incredibly busy. So now my radio is set to 121.9 for ground in case there is. And if there isn't, I'll just leave it on tower. But this is something to make us not go crazy. And now everything's done. Last check of the wind. It's from the right, blowing us to the left. AP is off. Captain's got the airplane. Hand on the throttle, even though the auto throttle has got us. We're a little bit off to the side here. Remember, the wind's blowing us into the runway, but I think we're a little bit too much off to the side now. So let's get over here. Wow, we're really getting blown off now. Let's get over here. It's going to be a gusty landing. Okay, throttles are at about 52%. I've just turned off the auto throttle. Hands are on the throttles now.
500.
Speed's good. This is probably the fun, one of the fun parts. A little high now. I'm going to pull my throttle back a bit.
300. Approaching minimums. 2 minimums.
Landing.
100. 50. 30. 20. 10.
Reversers. There's reverse. There's that high speed, 60 knots, stow the reversers, manual braking. There we go. Sometimes the brakes don't catch. And off on the high speed. Look at that, we didn't scratch anything. Speed brakes down, flaps up. Welcome to Berlin. So let's go ahead and do the takeoff, landing lights, and strobes. Let's come over here. I'm going to do the APU and turn off continuous start. Let's come on down here and go to transponder. Okay, we're cleared, pretty well cleaned up for taxi at this point. I'm going a little slow here, so let's go ahead and add just a little bit of power. But I don't mind being this slow at the moment, especially while I've got stuff to clean up in the cockpit. Let's see my auto brakes. We can do auto brakes off. And here is our turn out to our taxiway. And let's go ahead and head on in. Let's see, there is another add-on that I failed to mention to you that I've got running. It's called Flow Pro. And one of the things that Flow has is a landing rate. And you can see that my landing rate is a bit high, 293. Boy, that sounds pretty high. Here's the deal. The thing about landing rates is the real pilots don't care so much about the landing rate. I mean, they care, but what they really care about is, did you land in the right spot? And here's where I landed. But if you look over here, I should have landed on the big bars. So that's where you should have landed, is the big bars. I floated a little bit because I'm like every sim pilot looking for that nice landing rate. Now, this one said minus 293. Volanta also does its own landing rate, and it said 210. So there's two different numbers there. I, of course, am going to take the smaller number so that my fragile ego as a simulator pilot doesn't get too badly bruised. On the other hand, remember what the winds were? They were gusting up to 20 knots. So you're not going to get just absolutely the smoothest landing on something like that. And we're doing pretty good coming on in here. This is another one of those really nice German payware airports. There are some really good ones. There's some really good airports in the UK too. There are a lot of really great freeware airports around Greece that are nice. And there is some of the other parking. We're going to go into the terminal area here. This is also one of those airports where at night the blue taxiway lights don't just have a little bit of a blue, but there's this blue reflection on the ground too. And if it's raining, that reflection is even more pronounced. It's even more amazing. So that's one of the cool things to look for. The scenery is getting pretty stunning. Okay, well, we're going about 20 knots right now. We're going to want to slow it down just a little bit. And there we are coming into our gate area. I probably should have turned on the second one here. And we are looking for gate 12. So gate 12, that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 jetways from the end. I counted on the chart. So 1, 2, 3, that should be our gate 12. Perhaps a little bit slow now. Add maybe a little more power coming in. You can do a, if you're gonna have a long taxi in, you can do a 1-engine taxi in the 737. I forget which engine you would turn off. All of those procedures are different. Okay. 1, 2, 3, there's number 4. There's our gate. Yeah, I should have been in a little bit closer. This would be where they are parking overflow. Okay, yep, looking outside is kind of cheating, so let's go over here. And let's see if we can't come around in here. That's 13. Uh-oh. 13. Up. I turned a little bit too tight. There's gate 12. B12. Perfect. One of the other things that we're starting to get is incredibly good gate guidance going in. So digital guidance coming in too, which is really starting to get nice. There we are. And we're taxiing in about 6 knots right now, so I think your speed would be about 10 knots coming in. B12, look at that. Perfect. And let's see, are we actually getting guidance out of this? No, I don't see any. So come on out here. I think that's pretty good. Parking brakes. Engines. Generators. Generators are good. APU bleed. Cross bleed so we can keep the passengers comfy. Let's turn off the probe heaters so they don't get burned on them. They can get pretty hot. Let's stop squawking. We are done squawking. And this is all looking pretty good. Let's go ahead, and GSX does show passengers and stuff. Let's call request deboarding.
The boarding requested.
Let's see if it's going to get us a jetway. Oh, look at this. It's going to get us a jetway. So here comes a jetway. And let's go down here, and we need to be ready over on menu, FS actions, ground services, not ground services, doors, and get ready to open the 1L. So here comes the door. Some airplanes, the door will automatically open for you, but you need to do your own on the PMDG. There goes that door, so that's open. And if you look over here, you can see our doors open, and passengers should start getting off. Everything's looking good to go
Passengers
here. We
deporting
should have
started.
done the anti-collision lights and the taxi lights. I forgot those. All of this is good. Let's do these 3 fuel pumps. We're going to leave one on for the APU until ground power gets established. And we did it. This is essentially what's going. We actually did this. And you can see GSX will actually show passengers getting off the airplane. And in some cases, you can follow the passengers. They are now going all the way down the jetway and into the terminal. So you can really do a lot of immersion. If you look down here, you can see that GSX has brought out baggage carts, and they are loading. One of the other things that's going to be happening in the world of GSX is when you go into your cabins, you generally, so you see those passengers walking through, but passenger cabins, as you walk through these people. And so one of the things that you'll start to see is, let's get past these people. This is what cabins look like in flight sim these days. It's an empty cabin. Your airplane's loaded, they just don't put people in there. GSX is working on something new so that you're going to actually start seeing people sitting in there too. I don't know if they're going to be zombie people that are looking really weird, but if you're looking for a little bit of immersion, that's kind of what you got. And again, Berlin-Brandenburg, a very cool payware airport. I like this one too. These are fun routes, and it's also nice to dust off the old Air Berlin livery. Never got to fly one as a passenger. I just always thought it was a cool livery and a cool airline. And there you go. There is a cold and dark flight. As always, I just hope that what it is that I did here today helps you get your airplane up off the ground to cruise and back down on the ground and to the gate, and you're having as much fun with this as I am. I always like to, again, say, it's not about the right way versus the wrong way. It's what works for me. I do have a private pilot's license, but I'm not an airline pilot. I can fly a Cessna 152, a 172, and a Cardinal, but I've been flight simming for a long time and doing some live streaming, so maybe some of what it is that I have to offer helps you out a little bit too. I just hope you're having as much fun with this as I am. I also hope you'll join us over on the Spy Flight on Twitch. The Spy Flights on Twitch departs at 1900 Zulu, Tuesday through Sunday. Every flight is a group flight, and I hope you'll join us too. In the meantime, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the friendly sim skies. Cheers.